Let me tell you a story that should have ended quietly, and instead it has shaken the trust of an entire country. If the official version had its way, Jeffrey Epstein would simply be embarrassed as a strange banker who made his money in mysterious ways, kept money with some powerful friends, and was eventually found guilty of nothing more poor judgment. No client list, no accomplices, just one man acting completely alone. That is the story some people wanted us to believe. But the truth is far different. And to understanding how something this mysterious was allowed to happen for so long, we have to go back to the very beginning. Long before the private Island, long before the fortune, back to when nobody knew his name at all. Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn in 1953 or to two ordinary working class parents, his mother working as a teacher assistant, his father worked as a city gardener. People who knew the family described them as a humble, gentle, completely normal. Jeffrey himself was remembered as a quiet, smart kid who liked math. He graduated high school 2 years early and attended a small college in Manhattan that offered him free tuition. He studied math, transferred to another university, and eventually left without ever earning a degree. Despite that, within 2 months, he had landed a job teaching math at one of the most prestigious private schools in Manhattan, a school for children of the city's wealthiest families. As a teacher, by most accounts, he was not good one. He pushed the boundaries of the dress code. He developed a reputation for being far too familiar with the female students, even reportedly showing up at their parties. Eventually, he was let go for poor performance. But here is where things take a strange turn. Just months after losing that teaching job, Epstein was hired one of the biggest investment banks in the country. Thanks entirely to a connection made through wealthy parents he had impressed while teaching. Within 4 years, with no college degree and no formal financial training, he had promoted all the way up to limited partner. Then just a year later, he was asked to leave during investigation into insider trading at the firm. Throughout the rest of the 1980s, Epstein bounced between strange ventures, one of which turned out to be one of the largest financial fraud schemes in American history. The company he was working for had raised enormous sums of money from investors under false promises, spending it on private jets and luxury homes instead. When it all collapsed, his business partner went to prison for nearly 20 years. Epstein himself was never charged with anything. Around this same period, multiple people who know him recalled him suggestion he had worked for an intelligence agency at some point. Though he never said which one, he was later found carried fake passport with stamps from the Middle East. None of this fits together in a simple, sensible way, and it never has. By the late 1980s, Epstein launched his own private wealth management company, announcing he would only work with the clients worth over $1 billion. His very first client was a retail billionaire who built some of the biggest shopping brands in American malls, including a well-known lingerie company. That billionaires handed Epstein almost complete control over his personal fortune, despite many people around him questioning why someone with so little financial background would be trusted with that much money and responsibility. From that point forward, Epstein's life transferred completely. He was suddenly flying around the world in a private jet, acquiring massive properties, yet somehow his name never appeared on any public financial filings. No client list, no office, no real explanation, but to everyone around him, he looked like a man who owned the world. He built a connection with royalty, world leaders, and celebrities. He purchased a private island in the Caribbean, where he would host elaborate gatherings. And through a relationship with the daughter of a controversial international businessman with deep ties to overseas intelligence networks, Epstein gained access to an even wider circle of powerful people. In 2003, a journalist set out to write a profile uncovering exactly who Jeffrey Epstein really was. He researched suggesting his entire person as a brilliant investor was mostly fabricated, built largely on money from that earlier fraud scheme rather than any real investment genius. But there was something far more serious she uncovered during this same investigation. Two sisters came forward, claiming Epstein had assaulted them years earlier. One of them, while still a minor. The accusations were originally included in her articles. Then Epstein began showing up at the magazine offices, pressuring them to remove any mention of these women that same week. Threatening items were left at the home of the magazine editor. The accusation never made it into the final published place. In the years that followed, Epstein worked hard to build a new public image, this time as a genius supporter of science. He donated millions to major universities and hosted dinners with some of the most respected scientists and thinkers in the world. Some considered him brilliant. Others who spent time with him described him as a restless, shallow, and only interested in showing off his wealth. Frequently steering conversation back to the inappropriate comments about young women, that part of his life was never really hidden. It had particularly become a running joke among the people closest to him. In 2005, the truth finally started catching him with him. A mother in Florida contacted police after learning her young teenage daughter had been paid to visit Epstein mansion. What police discovered over the following years was deeply disturbing. A network involving dozens of undergo age from the local area recruited to visit him home for abuse disguised as a message appointments. Investigators found hidden cameras throughout the house and the evidence suggesting girl had been bought in from other countries as well. In 2006, Epstein was finally arrested. He pleaded guilty to state charges and received an 18-month sentence. What happened next should never been allowed. He served only 13 months, much of its work release program that let him leave the jail for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He was given his own private section of the facility. He created a fake non-profit organization simply so he would have somewhere to claim he was working during his daily release. After his release, his social circle never abandoned him. If anything, he became even more accepted. He hosted dinners with well-known media personalities. He threw a birthday parties for British royalty. Several friends publicly defended him. It would take more than decades, and the works of an investigators journalist publishing a major newspaper series in 2018. Before the full scope of what had actually happened came to light, that investigation revealed that the original federal case against Epstein had identical more than 80 potential victims between the ages of the 13 and 18, facing federal charges that could have sent him to prison for decades, possibly for life. Instead, a young, ambitious federal prosecutor in Florida secretary negotiated an extraordinary lenient deal, one that also protected any unnamed co-conspirators from ever facing charges and was sealed from the victims until after a judge had already approved it. That some prosecutor would later go on to serve in a presidential cabinet position, a connection that brought the entire case back into the national spotlight years later. In July of 2019, Epstein was arrested again. This time on federal charges, a search of his Manhattan home turned up thousands of disturbing photographs. It became painfully clear that activities had never actually stopped. Then, just weeks after his arrest, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official explanation pointed to a moment when his guards had reportedly fallen asleep and the cameras mentioning his cell had stopped working. Almost nobody believed it. In this year since, very little resolution has come. His longtime companion, who investigators say helped recruit and groom young victims for him, was eventually arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. A prominent member of British royalty resigned permanently from all the public duties after being repeatedly named a connection in that case. One of the Epstein closest associates, a modeling agency owner accused of similar crime, was later found dead in his own cell as well, before ever facing trial. What makes this theory so different for so many people is not just what happened. It is everything that still has not been answered. There has never been a clear, consistent explanation from any level of government about who else was involved, what records actually exist, or why the case was handled the way it was at every turn. Files remain sealed. Promises of full transparency have repeatedly led incomplete, heavily redacted information, and questions about powerful people connected to Epstein over the years continue circle without resolution. This case has tested public trust in a way few stories over here, cutting across political lines in a country that rarely agrees on anything, and that more than any single detail may be the most single important part of the entire story, because when the public steps in believing that powerful people will ever truly be held accountable, something deeper than one man crimes gets damaged. The basic belief that the rules apply equally to everyone start to feel like it was never quite true in the first place. And once people stop believing that, getting their trust back becomes the hardest thing of all.